I guess I was about 10 or 12 in those days. I was sitting that Sunday morning in church, listening to the pastor drone on about something in his sermon. My mind was wandering somewhere between falling in love with Karen Johnson and wondering why he couldn't make things more interesting. Why couldn't somebody just make this stuff available to somebody like me? Next thing I knew, I was in seminary. Fast forward a few decades. I'm sitting in an empty sanctuary here at Grace. We've had a heck of a ride. Life was good in those early years. We burst the seams. We built. We increased programming. Our membership hit an all-time high, even better than the 60s and 70s. Life was good. We saw no end to it. We talked about more building, more expansion. And then the bottom dropped out. We experienced an economic crash in the region. And suddenly people were leaving for work somewhere else. And the kids were gone. They recognized that there was no future for them here, and so they left for greener pastures. In 5 years, we lost 45% of our worshiping attendance. It was a real crisis. And I remember sitting there that morning in that dark, cold sanctuary and wondering alongside Ezekiel, "Oh God, can these bones still live?" Before I knew it, I was co-opted by the National Church to be a director for evangelical mission on a part-time basis in our region. It was almost as if God had said, "It's not enough for you to just worry about Grace. I'll give you 88 more congregations full of dry bones. You see if you can bring them back to life too. Go prophesy to them." There were a couple of things I learned out of that. One is be very careful about how loud you think in the presence of God, because God is listening and God will act. And two, that the mission of the church was and continues to be the telling of the story, the witnessing to the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the grace of God that comes to us through that gift. That's the sole mission of the church. It's what we were called to be in the beginning and today. And yet we've lost sight of that. Instead, we find ourselves pandering to an ever-decreasing market share of the faithful. We try to create programs, self-help classes, to be everything to everybody in an effort to woo them in and keep the butts in the pews and the bucks in the plate, to keep the institution running. In many ways, we've become not much different than most social organizations or family gatherings, except we have a rather strange ritual on Sunday morning. But we do good things. We feed the hungry. We have clothing drives. We speak out for justice. We are presence in the community. But are we church anymore? Are we that people that tell the story? Not only on Sunday morning, but throughout the week? Or have we forgotten who we are? Oh, I know the objections. I couldn't possibly tell the story. I don't know the Bible well enough. I'm not one of those people that can talk about such things with others. I can't convince anybody of anything. I've used them all. I remember back in my first year of college, I was thrown in with a lab partner. Those were my chemistry days. He found out that I was still a practicing Christian. We'd both been raised Lutheran, so we knew what that looked like. And one day in the library, he said, I just marvel at the fact that you can still go to church and have faith and still be a scientist. Does it make any sense to you? I tried to convince him. In fact, I spent most of the rest of the semester trying to convince him that the story, the Bible, was good stuff, that it was believable. It didn't work. It fell on deaf ears. Years later, reflecting on that experience, I remembered the parable of Jesus, the parable of the sower. You know the one. He goes out to sow seed and he just throws it indiscriminately, and some of it falls on the path, some in the weeds, and some on good soil. And when you figure it out, the amount that falls on good soil is a pretty small amount, but it yields a tremendous bounty because God has blessed it. We don't need to convince anybody. We don't need to make the word true. That's God's job. We simply need to tell the story again and again and again, not just on a Sunday morning, but in, with, and through all that we do and say. In short, it's a living out of our baptismal covenant. Let your light so shine before others that they may see in you the very glory of God. And so, for the next few weeks, I'm going to depart from my normal ritual on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're going to spend some time with the story. I'll start with Mark's version. And we'll begin to look at that story and how it impacts our lives in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of the world's divisiveness, in the midst of fear and worry, anxiety. To see if the story still speaks with the same kind of clarity. And who knows? It may find some good soil and continue to flourish and blossom. But be careful, because even now God is listening.